Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous is a fantasy RPG that launches tomorrow on PC, which is September 2nd of 2021, and it's also coming to PS4 and Xbox One on March 1st of 2022. I did back the game on Kickstarter in its earlier days and put some time into the beta, which at the time was a fairly unfinished, buggy, confusing experience. But thanks to Owlcat Games, I was also able to play basically version 1.0 a bit early to give you guys this initial impressions review. I now feel like I have a solid idea as to what this game is all about and what it offers, and I hope this video can give you some insight into whether or not you think Wrath of the Righteous is worth your hard-earned money. For more RPG content, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and without further ado, let's jump right in.
I can't wait for Pathfinder.
I do want to point out that this video will not contain any story spoilers, and most of the footage will be from the first act of the game. First and foremost, you do not need to have played Pathfinder Kingmaker to enjoy and follow along in Wrath of the Righteous. If you have played Kingmaker, all the better though, as your knowledge of the lore and of course understanding the fairly complex rules and mechanics is going to make it much easier. Kingmaker and Wrath of the Righteous both take place in the fantasy world of Golarion, but they are set in different nations with different characters, and most importantly, they're both separate adventure paths. There are of course references to Kingmaker that players will enjoy, but nothing core to the story that you have to absolutely know. Both games are based on Pathfinder 1st Edition, which is a tabletop RPG with a similar but more complex rules system than D&D. Many people call it D&D 3.5, and we will get more into that as the video goes on. Right upon starting a new game, players are presented with a choice of game difficulty, which ranges from story mode all the way up to a mode called Unfair. You can also do a custom difficulty and tweak just about any and everything that you want, and you can do this while on the fly. Pathfinder can be a frustrating game, especially on a first playthrough, so there's really no shame in finding the right difficulty levels for yourself. As a new player to Pathfinder, I would recommend starting off on normal or below, as you'll be spending a lot of time absorbing the rules and mechanics and just trying to understand the vast amount of spells and abilities that you get access to. If you're one who gets stressed out over making choices, you may want to close your ears for a second, because in this game you can choose between 25 different classes, each of which also have 5 to 8 archetype choices, and there are 12 different races. Also, don't forget about the prestigious classes that you get access to when you meet certain prerequisites. You're going to be assigning ability scores, skills, feats, deities, backgrounds, alignments, and possibly more. And as your characters get further into the game, you'll also be choosing between 10 different mythic paths, which grant their own abilities and features. The amount of choices and combinations is pretty damn awesome in my opinion, and it's going to be one of the highlights of the game for many CRPG players. But let's not forget that it can also feel a bit intimidating. Keep in mind that in character creation you can choose one of the pre-made characters, or just put yourself in tunnel vision mode by clicking on nothing but all of the green thumbs throughout the character creation process, which is Owlcat's way of giving you some guidance with your choices. Although it's not perfect, I'm very happy that they included this in character creation and also while leveling up. If you understand the D&D rules from D&D itself or games like Baldur's Gate 3 and Solasta, understanding Pathfinder is going to be a much easier task than someone who doesn't come from that background, but it's still not an easy task by any means. You may have a general understanding as to what armor class means, but what about touch AC, flat-footed AC? And then for actions in combat, you have standard actions, full round actions, move actions, swift actions, free actions, and then you got combat maneuvers, touch attacks, ranged touch attacks, and so on. The point is that the game has a lot of depth and complexity to it, which does mean that it won't be for everyone. But those of you that do enjoy games where a lot of knowledge is to be gained, you just may find yourself in CRPG heaven. I do want to point out that the game does do a great job of having tooltips pop up, and you can always reference the handy encyclopedia where everything is explained in fairly easy to understand terminology. Just know that as a new player, if you're playing on anything close to normal difficulty, you will be forced to read and reference the rules and mechanics quite a lot if you want to succeed. In terms of visuals, as you can see in character creation, things are a bit more on the cartoony side, but it doesn't seem to take away from the game's overall immersive beauty, which is what really matters. Particle effects is what stands out here, as spells and various magical things are downright beautiful to witness, which also makes them extremely fun to use. In terms of visual cinematics, well, we have been spoiled with Baldur's Gate 3 Early Access, as all the scenes in Pathfinder are mostly just you watching your characters kind of awkwardly talk to each other in isometric gameplay form. This is not a deal breaker for myself, and at times I actually prefer this style. Just don't get hyped up thinking that you'll be playing a movie game. While on the subject of visuals, I might as well touch on performance. Overall, the game feels like it runs well on my 2070 Super on max settings at 1440p. Once in a while, I will get scenes that turn choppy, but leaving the area and coming back in or restarting the game seems to fix the problem, and it doesn't happen too often. During the crazy battle scenes, I'm usually getting 55 to 60 FPS minimum, and outside of combat, it's reaching upwards to 80 or so. You may notice my FPS counter in some of the gameplay footage showing lower numbers than what I just stated, and that's simply because I have multiple software programs running while recording. As for the game's audio, the soundtrack is top-notch. There's no complaints here. You get some really great battle music, medieval choirs are going off left and right, and the soundtrack of a game, in my opinion, is such an important part of the experience, and Pathfinder does not let us down. As for the voice acting, just note that the full game is not voice acted, so for many of the side quests and even some of the more main ones you will have to read, and it's important to point out that there is a decent amount of reading to be had. There's certain parts where you wish there was voice acting, as it could really add to the immersion of the quest, and one example would be when you meet the storyteller character. And then there's other scenes where you may wish there wasn't voice acting, as it might be a bit annoying and it slows down your reading speed. It's not perfect, but good enough, and I am happy that they added it to the game even in its limited fashion. As far as the overall amount of reading being fairly high, this can be a good and bad thing depending on the type of player that you are. It seems like Owlcat tactically placed some reading scenes that really do make you feel like you're reading a book, and I do think in many ways that that is a special feeling to accomplish in a video game. The writers at Owlcat clearly have great writing skills, but I do want to point out that there are some parts that just have way too much filler, and they seem to be drawn out too long for my liking, just like this video. The point being, just be prepared to read, sometimes multiple pages. Now let's get into the gameplay a bit. One of the features of this game that I worried the most about was the ability to switch between real-time with pause combat and turn-based combat. When a company tries to be good at two systems at once, I oftentimes get worried that overall both systems are going to be lackluster. Well, I've been proven wrong here. Both real-time with pause and turn-based have worked mostly great for me so far, and I find myself switching between them both, sometimes even in the middle of a combat encounter. I never thought I would like doing this. Real-time with pause not only just feels, should I say, classic, but it also saves you a hell of a lot of time and gives the game some real excitement and pace. Turn-based combat gives you more of the tabletop experience. You get more time to figure out your moves and make less mistakes. I highly recommend new players toggle on turn-based mode initially, as it gives you the time you need to process everything that's going on, and it really just helps the overall learning process go much smoother, which in turn leads to more enjoyment of the game, in my opinion. Having both systems seemingly work well in this game is great, and with a subject that can be so divisive, everyone can get their way in Pathfinder. As for the combat abilities and spells, well, it's been quite the journey trying to learn and remember what they all actually do, but once you solidify some of them in your brain, it is a quite rewarding experience. There's a solution to just about everything if you're willing to look hard enough for it. Weapons, armor, and trinkets are very important in this game, and there seems to be enough of a variety to keep it interesting. There's plenty of slots to fill out on your character to make them more powerful, which in turn makes looting a bit more fun. You can also have up to 4 different weapons slotted on your character, but keep your encumbrance in mind. And do note that weapon types do play an important role in the game, especially when facing tougher enemies. It's important to pay attention to what you pick up and really look at the details as to what it offers. And in my opinion, having this be an important aspect of the game does add to the overall engagement. In Wrath of the Righteous, you'll be fighting demons, and to put it simply, to keep them from taking over the world. And you'll be doing this with 5 companions by your side, so a party of 6. With all of the different classes in the game and the depth behind the classes, this can make for some great variety within your group, and also help with replayability. From what I can tell, there are a total of 12 companions, and a 13th one for those who may venture down the Lich mythic path. The companions that I have encountered have all been unique from each other, and I find myself liking, loving, and hating some of them, which in my opinion is how companions should feel. I don't really feel as attached to these companions, nor do I like as many of them when compared to some other more modern party-based RPGs, but I think this mostly comes down to the game lacking that immersive cinematic style where you can really feel and see the emotion of your companions. In this game, we're stuck with their sometimes awkward voice acting. As time goes on and I experience more, my opinion may very well change on this for the better or worse. Wrath of the Righteous does seemingly offer plenty of main story quests, side quests, companion quests, and even more minor quests called errands. There doesn't seem to be a shortage, and because of the game's mechanical depth, I do find myself interested in trying to complete them all to further my knowledge and of course get some more XP. Some of them are fun and some are boring. I guess that's like most games. Most importantly though, I am sucked into the main story and I do feel the need to know how it's all going to turn out. Some of the side quests have tied nicely back into the main plot and brought some surprising events to the table. In terms of player agency and role-playing, I have been presented with many choices in and outside of dialogue. Do I embark on the path of righteousness and be a mighty hero, or let my chaotic evil ways take over and give me a few eerie chuckles? When choosing your mythic class after Act 1, you really start to feel like your choices are going to have a big impact on the game. During dialogue in general, many times you will be presented with the option to conduct some skill checks, and if you pass them, they will unlock new ways to respond. There's also many dialogues that seem to weigh heavily on the input of your present companions, and if you had a different party comp, it could not have possibly played out the same way. The extent to which your overall choices truly matter I won't be able to know until I've done multiple playthroughs, but the feeling of weight behind your choices is present, which means I'm satisfied in this category. Back to gameplay mechanics, resting in Wrath of the Righteous is a very important system, and I have to say that it seems like this is one of the better ideas for your CRPG resting systems. Let me know how you feel about it below in the comments. Resting in Wrath of the Righteous will give you HP back, restore your spell slots, reduce fatigue, and allow your party to do some crafting. If you rest outside of safe areas, it's as easy as popping out a couple sleeping bags. But note that resting in these unsafe areas, your party will also start to suffer from the corruption system. The more you rest, the more your corruption goes up, and when it reaches new tiers, you start to see the negative status effects that it gives. You can get rid of corruption by resting in a safe area like a tavern, and there's some other ways, but it does take time and sometimes risk to get back to those safe areas. This corruption system really makes resting feel like it has meaning and significance behind it, instead of it being something that you can spam to keep your party fully powered at all times. While resting, you'll also assign different characters with different skills to attempt to accomplish different tasks throughout the night, such as reducing the amount of corruption gained, camouflaging your camp to avoid random encounters, crafting activities, and more. And all of these tasks involve skill checks, which are similar to D&D ability checks, and having this in the game absolutely gives more value to different party members who excel in different non-combat skills. I personally am really liking this system, and I honestly think other games should learn from it. When traveling to different areas on the larger maps, you will be engaged in a fast travel system, but it's not really fast travel as in click a button and appear. This is not an open world game. The game is divided into separate instances. When traveling from one district to another, if we use the initial city map as an example, you get to watch what appears to be a tabletop piece representing your party moving across the map. And along the way, your party will be doing some skill checks, bringing even more importance to your character character's non-combat skills, which is great. If they fail at stealth checks, be ready for random encounters to slow your fast travel journey down. Now, I am a fan of the idea of random encounters and what they can do, but so far in this game, most of them feel like pointless time wasters. They are not the most fun in my opinion, and sometimes I want to whack my keyboard over my head when I get one. While on the subject of travel, after you complete the first portion of the game, you will find yourself leading armies in the new Crusade System. The Crusade System will offer a strategy map mode, and I guess you could say it compares to Heroes of Might and Magic style, where you'll be recruiting troops and sending them to take out demon armies and garrisons. The army versus army battles will take place on a chess-looking strategy board where you'll be making your tactile moves. If you manage to win your battles, your armies will be able to push forwards on the map, and then you and your party can jump into these new areas of the game and explore on the ground. I think it's really cool to have this army versus army strategic tactile minigame implemented within the game, and it's clear that Owlcat has put a lot of time into making it the best that they can. However, it does add another level of complexity and depth to the game, and some players may be asking, is this even necessary? Just when you thought you were learning things, then you get a game within a game. Well, the good thing is that they did add a toggle to turn on Crusade Auto Mode, which basically turns it off for you, but you don't miss out on anything story-wise. In Pathfinder Kingmaker, Auto Mode for kingdom building would make you miss things, from what I understand, but it's not the case here. So being an optional feature that doesn't really pull away from the core of the game makes this, in my opinion, a really cool system to have, and it's certainly going to further separate Pathfinder from other CRPGs. To wrap it all up, I do think that Wrath of the Righteous offers a deep, epic adventure with countless options to explore. The combat is deep and tactile, and because it offers both real-time with pause and turn-based mode, more players will be able to enjoy it. Some mechanics and systems are not perfect, but most of them work well, and the good things outweigh the bad. Completing this game should feel like a real accomplishment, and afterwards I can see myself doing it again. I absolutely do think that this is a buy for CRPG lovers who enjoy real depth in their games, while those seeking a more laid-back gaming experience, you'll be forced to play on easier difficulties if you're not willing to spend the time to learn how everything works. And that'll be it for my initial impressions for Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, I really do appreciate it. Like I always say, it's the most important analytic that YouTube takes into account for a video success. So thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. I really do appreciate it. I'll be sure to keep releasing Pathfinder content over the next couple weeks. A lot of beginner's guides. I know that it helps myself when I'm making them, and I do want to share that knowledge, and maybe an in-depth critique of the game when I finally completed everything. There's just a lot planned, and I hope to catch you guys in a future video. See ya.